For people whose marriage lasted less than a year, what went wrong? We expedited the marriage because she was pregnant, and I loved her already, so wasn't concerned about it. I was working crazy hours so that she could stay home with the baby, and our schedule started shifting, so we didn't spend as much time together. She had postpartum and started playing online role-playing games all night and met a guy who didn't work and lived off of his mother, so he had all the time to talk to her. Long story short, she kissed our daughter, gave her to me, and ran off with him. Fast forward over a decade and we're fine as friends now, and my daughter is cuddled up beside me as I type this, playing on her tablet. The karma is time and lifestyle haven't been kind to her, and our daughter would rather be with me and trust me more. Good for you. Being a badass single dad. Did you just assume that he is single? I'm sure someone has snapped him up quick. College roommate. He met a girl junior year that our entire group thought was wrong for him. But love is blind. Fast forward to summer after graduation and they are to get married in the fall. I'm at the wedding. They were apart for most of the summer, and he was working, and she was finishing school and putting the wedding together. We converge on her hometown in Colorado. The wedding goes down, big reception, lots of money dropped on this one. We see them off on the honeymoon, and I return to St. Louis to home sweet home. 7 days later, I get a call from him asking if he can come stay with me. Sure. I pick him up at the airport, single. At his insistence, we hit the nearest bar and I get to hear all about how she cheated on him over the summer, but went ahead with the marriage because she felt pressured by how much her parents were paying. She told him pretty much as soon as they were alone, after the ceremony, not at any time during the 7 to 10 days. They were together before the wedding. She insists that they go on the honeymoon to work things out, but refuses to be intimate as she still has feelings for the other guy, so he never returns to her. Gets checked for all the STDs, negative, and has the marriage annulled within 6 months. Belinda, screw you for what you did to my friend. Yeah, screw Belinda. My mom's marriage to her first husband was only a year and a half at the most. He was diagnosed with cancer, and he said that he wanted to marry her before he died. So they got married and took a honeymoon to Hawaii, because he'd always wanted to go there too. Aw, this is the saddest story here. Sad, but in a way, also happier than the other stories here. She had another boyfriend when I proposed, and kept him around while planning our wedding. They got married after our divorce. Don't get married while you're in the military. Listen to the signs. I'm sorry that you went through that and had a see you next Tuesday of a wife. I am 36 years old and just learned the see you next Tuesday insult a couple of months ago. My absolute new favorite insult. I wish I could have learned about it years ago. This one kind of screwed up. Happened to a friend. We were deployed in Okinawa. My friend married his girl prior to deployment. He found out mid-deployment that she cheated on him, but the way he found out was kind of messed up. He checked his Facebook one day and saw a message from some dude he didn't know. The guy straight up told him that he slept with his wife. She didn't say she was married, and when he checked her Facebook, he saw that she was married to my friend. He felt guilty and had to message him. My friend wasted no time and divorced her in Okinawa. I'm not sure if that was possible. I just remember him doing some kind of legal work the following day. Good on the guy for telling him though. Some would just want to avoid that situation and let further harm be done. I'm a girl, but I kinda was in that situation. Not within a marriage because we're all pretty much still teens or in our early 20s. Slept with a guy who was doing a year abroad. He was from Spain. A few times. All good fun. He told me he was single and not looking for something romantic right now. Suddenly, a friend of his, met the guy at a party, told me that the guy had a pretty much long-term girlfriend back home. I was mad to say the least, told him to leave and never had contact with him again. I wish I could have told his girlfriend, but I don't know her name, don't have his Facebook, and don't even speak Spanish. I hope she finds out somehow though, because I'm sure as hell likely not the only girl he slept with. Some people, man. My cousin was married for 18 hours, or something ridiculous like that. To hear her tell it, there was a really apocalyptic argument on their wedding night over where they went from there. The moral of the story appears to be that before you get married, you and your spouse should have roughly compatible ideas of what you're looking for out of a marriage. How many kids, when to have them, where you live, whether you both work, money issues, etc. That's not stuff that just works itself out magically over time. I pictured them driving in the car after their wedding ceremony, wondering where to go next, and then breaking up. I know someone that basically had this happen. As they were driving home from the wedding, they had lived together for 2 years. She burst into tears and said that she never wanted to get married. He drove her to her parents and they had the marriage annulled. Husband decided to start an affair within 3 months of marriage. Found about 6 months after. Still maintains there was nothing wrong. Just thought it would have been over before I found out. Oh, and our baby was only 6 months old. What a catch of a man who started divorce proceedings after waiting the year minimum. What is a year minimum? There can be a year requirement of separation before you can be legally divorced. In my parents' case, they had to live apart for an entire year and testify under oath that they had not spent a single night under the same roof in that year period. Apparently in Maryland, that's the rule, and if they had spent a single night in the same house, the year waiting period would have had to start over. Such stupid crap. They were allowed to get married too young. Why weren't they allowed to divorce when they were old enough to realize it was time to move on? Obviously, I'm still salty about my parents' divorce. Mine lasted just a little over a year, but close enough. Married my girlfriend of 4 years right before getting deployed. She didn't have anything to keep herself busy while I was gone. Job, hobby, etc. Ended up getting into drugs while I was gone, and then I got her pregnant during my 2 weeks leave in the middle of the deployment. She felt so trapped that she had talked me into agreeing to give our child up for adoption once she was born. I was so blindly in love with her that I would have agreed to darn near anything she suggested. She ended up leaving me a week after our daughter was born and canceling the adoption, taking her back from the adopting parents. Long story cut short, she got back into drugs, pretty sure she wasn't on them while pregnant with my daughter, had 2 more kids with whoever was her dealer at the time, and CPS ended up stepping in, which gave me full custody of my daughter. Not a day goes by when I look at my daughter and wonder what the heck I was thinking, and I'm so glad to have this wonderful, crazy little girl in my life. I feel for you and your daughter, and I'm glad you two have each other. She started feeling trapped, as in my expectation of monogamy was too much, so she discovered polyamory, decided she wanted to be polyamorous with her boss, and that it was worth opening the marriage no matter what. She was pretty surprised when I divorced her. She was using poly as an excuse to throw responsibility back on you for not being open-minded or supportive enough, convenient cover for what used to be called cheating, promiscuity, or being a whore. There's some evidence that she may actually be poly, and I'm 96% sure she didn't physically cheat on me. Emotionally, yes. I think she put off examining her feelings about monogamy, me, and not knowing how to handle attraction to other guys till after the wedding, when it all came crashing down. She's kind of trash, but not malicious. Nothing really went wrong. Nothing really went at all. We had been dating for 7 years, so we thought it was a safe bet. Realized a year into our marriage that we were better as separate people, and it sucked. There were a ton of tears, a whole lot of begging not to let it end, a whole bunch of trying new things, living separately, splitting the money, etc., so that we could be apart together, but it just didn't work. We were just live-in friends when it came down to it, and I think, too, that if we hadn't gotten married, we never would have seen it. It was sort of the impetus for us both to move on. As crappy as that might sound, it was a shakeup in our otherwise completely humdrum stable life, and it ended up working out for the best, but it sucked for a long time. That spark isn't permanent with new relationships. That's why so many people end up getting bored and marriage is considered hard. The important thing is finding an SO that you enjoy being around and having fun with, a best friend. That way when the spark fades, you are not stuck with the starfish who sits on the couch and eats Cheetos all day. Marry your best friend, not a girl that you have the hots for. If you expect to find a relationship where the spark never fades, you'll be very disappointed. The spark leaves even when you have been dating for more than a year, but the fun doesn't end. It just isn't entirely sexual anymore. A friend of mine bought a house in a small town with his new wife, and he continued to commute 1 hour each way to work in our city. She worked part-time in the small town. Around the 10-month mark of their marriage, she cheated on him with a mechanic in that small town. That was 5 years ago, and she's still with the mechanic, but he won't commit. Geez, I wonder why. Maybe she likes dogs and he likes cats. My ex-wife and I lasted about 7 years, but her first marriage ended pretty much right at the year mark. They were both 19, she got pregnant, they got married, and tried to make their life work on one $8 an hour income, with her as a stay-at-home mom with no money, no car, and no friends in the same place in life she was. Day in and day out stress drove them apart. Same for me and my wife. In our first 2 years of living together, I was making about $9 to $10 an hour, and she didn't work. I was always broke and was financially challenged. One day we talked it over and I decided to just give my entire paycheck to her and she would pay bills and budget my lunches and everything. All of a sudden, we were on our way out of her mom's house and into an apartment with cable and internet and a car and cell phones. She freaking rocked at budgeting. Been together for 9 years now. That's badass. I hope you have told her how you feel because I'm sure she would love to hear it. I was married for slightly more than a year. We were high school sweethearts and literally got married right after high school. Our whole marriage was plagued with terrible life events. We moved closer to her college but had to move back due to finances, and right at this time my grandmother died. We were pretty poor after moving back home, but we managed for a while. Things were even looking nice. We had moved out of my mom's house and had our own apartment again. We were working, had money, and were enjoying our time together. I got deathly ill, and this put me out of work. With medical bills and rent, we were back to struggling. I had a lot of mental issues, like anxiety and depression at the time as well, and so did she. She started to get really close to a coworker while I was out of work too. They're dating now. I moved out in November of 2015. We were married in July of 2014. We were officially divorced in April last year. We haven't talked much since, and it's still difficult sometimes to think about, but I've gotten much better over the past few months. Hang in there, dude. I have no idea how it must feel, but it will get better. What went wrong? Does being stupid count? We had been dating for about 3 years, got to a crossroads. Both of us finished school. I was thinking about what job offer I wanted to accept and where I'd have to move. He was having a major freakout about not being together, so he convinced me to get married. It wasn't that hard. I was apprehensive about moving to a strange town, and marriage seemed like a better idea. After marriage, I went to work. He decided he wanted another degree. Okay. Then about 6 months into his new studies, he gets recruited for a job 1,000 miles away. He took the job without telling me, but we pack up and move. Now he's working and I'm working, but he's working at a job he's really excited about, and I'm working at a crappy low-paying job because it's the only thing I can find. Then he gets headhunted by another company. We move again. And now we are living in a rented trailer because it's the only thing we can find on short notice. He's working 12-hour days and I'm stuck at home. No job, no car, no friends. Truthfully, I wasn't the best of marriage partners. I'm going crazy, stuck at home all day with no car and no company except the TV. When he does come home after working a 12-hour day, he's exhausted. I'm giving him crap about not getting out of the house ever. He starts hanging out with his work friends, probably to avoid me. He starts cheating with the women at work. No idea how many other women there were, but I know of at least 2. I know about these women because by now I've started to develop a circle of friends, mostly wives of the people he works with. They tell me. When I confronted him, he told me that he just didn't realize how hard marriage would be. I took the car and drove home, left him in that crappy trailer with no car. Some months later, he asks me to file for divorce. I told him no way. He screwed it up. He could file and explain the grounds to his attorney and the judge. He sent me the divorce papers in the mail. He did call me about 10 years later and apologized for being such an asshole, but really, it wasn't all him. So he forced you to keep moving without ever consulting you and then worked 12 hours a day, aka you basically never got a chance to see each other? It does indeed sound to me like he screwed it up. After spending a year together, we got married so that he wouldn't get deported. I took care of him, paid all the bills, and paid to sponsor him. Turns out he was already married in his own country. Yep. Took me a while to stop being bitter over the thousands of dollars I got conned out of. My dad had recently died, and I suppose he saw me like a lion sees a wounded gazelle. I briefly dated a guy who said he was separated from his wife. Well, technically, he wasn't lying. I mean, she was in another country while he was here. I found out that they weren't actually separated when he asked me to be quiet while he was on a phone call with her and his kids back home. The day after the wedding, a sheriff showed up on our doorstep with child support papers for a 3-month-old baby. Turns out he had been sleeping with one of his coworkers. I was willing to look past the indiscretion, but when he refused to take responsibility for his child, I couldn't handle it anymore. The kid shouldn't have to suffer because his dad is an idiot. Divorce was final 11 months after our wedding day. A buddy of mine found out the night before the wedding his soon-to-be wife slept with her ex. He goes through with it, and as the vicar ends the ceremony, he tells all, in front of everyone, throws the ring away and asks the vicar if he does take-backs. Groom: do you by any chance do take-backs? Vicar: yeah, no problem. You may unkiss the bride. Though it didn't happen to me, A friend of mine got married to a woman he had been with for a long time. They had children and a home together as well. The relationship was failing and they both thought that finally getting married would save it. Spoiler alert, it did not. Love the spoiler alert at the end. 10 out of 10 would read that comment again. I went to school with a girl who got married in July of 2016 after 3 months of dating a guy. They got divorced in November of 2016 after the presidential election. Turns out one of them was an extreme conservative while the other was an extreme liberal, and this was not discovered until then. How does that not come up? Something tells me their relationship was 80% sex and 20% Netflix, with very little chit-chat in between episodes. Got married after 5 months. He wanted to move to Washington and virtually forced me to do it, since I didn't want to. Quit my job and house and stayed at a hotel for a couple of days. The day before moving, he said he fell out of love and would go on without me. Left me heartbroken, homeless, and jobless. Bonus, he didn't move to Washington. He's in Davenport, Florida, around 10 minutes away, and got a boyfriend about a day after leaving me. Are you a man, or did he come out as gay? I'm a guy. We were together for 6 years, pretty young, 19 at the beginning. Her mental health slowly declined as we were together, but I loved her all the same. She eventually was diagnosed with bipolar 2 and went through massive mood swings. Eventually, I became resentful and started to look for companionship elsewhere. I regret it more than anyone could ever imagine. She caught me and accused me of having a relationship with multiple other people. I eventually asked for an annulment after 8 months of marriage around Christmas. I'm not sure I could have made any more bad decisions than I did. She moved away to be with her father, as he is 90 years old. I miss her every day. Not I, a girlfriend of mine, had a high school sweetheart. I think he was diagnosed with bone marrow cancer after they were pregnant. Either way, it had progressed and decided to amputate his arm. Didn't get all the cells and so had to amputate up to his shoulder. Still didn't work and had it spread to his chest months before their wedding. Not sure how long they were engaged, but his mom confronted her and gave her the blessing that she is under no obligation to marry her son. My friend remained vigilant, still married him, and he passed away less than 2 weeks later in their home. I've never cried more at a funeral, especially watching their not even 2-year-old daughter running around the funeral smiling and waving at everyone. He was only 24 or 25 years old. Not me, but my sister-in-law. She dated a guy who had 1 ball and low T. They get married, but he's cheating on her the whole time. No idea how with 1 nut and low T. Maybe it was the androgel. Anyway, we go out to eat on a double date in Old City, and my wife decides to get a tattoo. So she gets a little 26.2 on her hip. Marathon. My wife's sister tells her husband to get her name. He says no. She freaks out. Now granted, I'm all for realizing we don't know the future, and it's not wise to get someone's name, but this is getting good. So my wife asks me if I would get her name. I said, of course, honey. I would get your name across my throat. Sister looks at her husband, he hangs his head and gets her name across the inside of his bicep. Huge. He gets caught cheating like a week later and she divorces him within the week. I was 1 year out of a 12-year marriage to a woman who was more than a little crazy. I had custody of our 3 kids and I met a woman. She was really nice and we were talking about marriage after a short while. I tried to insist that we wait a year, and at first she agreed, but she had 100 reasons why we should get married sooner. I relented and we got married after 4 months. Within 2 months, she assured me she had made a big mistake and I had to keep talking her out of quitting. I thought things were getting better, but 3 days after Christmas, she told me that she bought a house and would be leaving in 3 weeks. Oh, and by the way, could she stay until the closing? We had been married 5 months when she left and 10 months when the divorce was final. She moved about 40 miles away. I saw her a few times before she moved out west. Oddly, after moving out west, she started calling me asking to come back. I told her I was open to starting over from scratch, but I was not open to immediately moving back together. That wasn't what she wanted, and she kept asking me for a year. One day the calls stopped, and eventually I heard that she had met someone else and gotten married. I don't hate her, though I do hate what she did to my kids. Their mother was unreliable, and the day I had to tell them that another woman in their life could not be counted on was the worst day of my life. My SO's brother is in the Marines and got stationed in California. Rushed a marriage without a ceremony for the benefits. Didn't even bother telling his family, which is across the country, until after. He also ran up a bunch of debt fixing his truck and then breaking it at the next weekend off-roading. The relationship was immediately a crap show, and not even 6 months in, he's been caught answering ads. He's also done a complete 180 personality change and is treating his family like crap. They flew across the country to see him and meet his wife for the first time. He would only meet them for lunch at Panera one day. He's also told them to not talk to him unless it's something important. If they make it past a year, I'll be amazed. It's almost like once a week he asks himself, how can I make my life worse? And then answers his own question by doing it. We married too young, and when she wouldn't stop smoking in the house, I put her cigarette and her out with a fire extinguisher one day while she was sitting on the couch. Never got married, but dated a girl for a few years. Talked about marriage all the time. We were a great couple, and one day she admits she couldn't actually marry me because she truly hated my last name. I've had 3. First, my wife turned out to be a lesbian, but who could see that coming? Then I met this really cool British girl. We hit it off from day one, and I thought I loved her. Only at the altar I said another woman's name. She hated me, and of course that didn't work out. Next, I went to Vegas with a couple of my friends to see our other friend who had an acting gig up there. Well, I got blackout wasted and ended up marrying her in a chapel up there. My bad. Found Ross. Thanks for watching until the end. If you're comfortable sharing your story, we'd love to hear about it in the comment section below. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and then stop by the channel to check out another amazing video.